kind of like what I said with DJU and Florida State. At some point, there are times when you don't feel like you have to pivot. There are times when you don't feel like you should pivot. And there will be certain situations, certain people, certain teams that prove to you, okay, yeah, I think it's obviously something that I'm doing is not working. A lot of people jumped into my mentions. A lot of people jumped into my comments, whether on TikTok, whether on YouTube. If you're not following me, link in the description below, follow me. But they jumped into my mentions because I said that Clemson was going to find themselves in the college football playoffs. For them to essentially, lose 34-3 to the top ranked team in Georgia. So now you got people that said, "Oh, this is the team that you have in the college football play." Ain't no way they're making the college football playoffs. Look. I think this game brought on a bit of an overreaction. And hear me out. I think the overreaction comes when we talk about Clemson in a sense of, I think Clemson is still going to be a very good team. I think that Clemson is still going, especially when you see what we saw from Florida State, I think Clemson is still going to find themselves at least competing for a college football playoff spot, and I think that they're going to make it. I think Clemson still has everything in front of them. I think what people heard me say was Clemson is going to be a dominant team, and I don't feel that way. In fact, the reason why I don't feel that way is kind of the reasoning for this topic being where it is in the show. There's a reason why Dabo gets so much flack for his refusal to integrate the transfer portal. You saw the team that has embraced new age football going against a team that has embraced traditional style football methods, and you saw what happened. I'm not saying that you can't find talent in recruiting. I'm not saying you can't breed talent. I think that Clemson is a great place for that, and we've seen that on several occasions. I just think you're always going to be a step behind when you're going against teams that can get better faster because they use players that have already been in the college football system that are better than other players. When people heard me say that Clemson is going to make the college football playoffs, I think they heard me say that they're going to be number one or something. I think there is light years in between Clemson and Georgia. I don't think both of those teams are necessarily close at all. I view Georgia as a juggernaut, a powerhouse. While Clemson has had that reputation for a while, I don't view them as a powerhouse anymore because they have been extremely slow to change with the times. So I feel it's an overreaction when people say that Clemson is going to be trash. They went up against the number one team in college football. I don't project them to be trash. Where I don't think the overreaction comes from is when people say why there's such a talent gap, and it showed. There should be no reason why a Clemson team should not be able to find the end zone against a Georgia. I'm not saying that they're going to beat a Georgia, but not even find the end zone. When I talked about Florida State, and I talked about DJ U. I said, when there are times when you have to ask yourself, when is it time to pivot? And I feel if DJ does not get it together, it will be time to pivot very soon. A game like this, a game like Clemson and Georgia, should really force you to look yourself in the mirror if you're Dabo, if you're Clemson, and really make you think, okay, what I'm doing, something's not right. Because at no point, even when the game was 6-0, at no point did I think that Clemson had a shot of winning. And especially when that second half started, I think every single person that watched that game had no inkling that Clemson was going to come back. I'm not here to tell someone how to run their program. I'm not here to tell someone how to build and foster and grow their team. And I shouldn't, what I'm saying shouldn't be breaking news at this point. If last year wasn't an indication that something needs to change, and I'm not saying last year, seeing as though Clemson didn't have a good season. Clemson had an okay season. They didn't make the college football playoffs, but they did make a bowl game, which I don't even think they won. Clemson, for the last few years now, I'll say at least since losing Trevor Lawrence, or Trevor Lawrence leaving to go to the NFL, it has seemed like Clemson is a step behind the top tier teams. It has always seemed that when they go up against a top tier team, a Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama, a Florida State, it seems like they have been a step or two behind. And I understand how difficult recruiting can be. You have to convince an individual you have to convince an individual to leave their home amongst a sea of offers. You have to convince them to get to to come to your school, and try your hardest to allow or keep at bay their wandering eye and wandering ear. I understand how difficult that can be. The power of persuasion is difficult to obtain. But I can't help but think, you can feel how you feel about the transfer portal. Obviously, there are a lot of people that don't like the transfer portal. There's a lot of people that feel the transfer portal is being overused. There's a lot of people that think that the transfer portal is getting abused. And for that, I can say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, For the people that said that there needs to be major changes to the transfer portal, I can understand, and I second that. I don't think that it needs to be completely done away with, but I do think that there needs to be changes. But just like NILs, I understand that it is here. And as much as you can hate it, as much as you can despise it, teams are using the transfer portal as tools. If you don't believe me, look at Miami and Cam Ward. Miami There was no excitement around Miami outside of the history of Miami these last few years. Cam Ward goes to Miami from the transfer portal, and now Miami is exciting after 1 week. They look drastically different offensively. Now, granted, they did play Florida, and Florida isn't the best right now. But Miami, there is a glimmer of hope, a bright glimmer of hope in Miami because they effectively use the transfer portal. Look at all the top teams. Look at all of them. Georgia, filled with transfer portal players. Oregon, Dylan Gabriel. We'll talk about Oregon in a second, but Dylan Gabriel. In fact, pretty much that entire offense is transfer portal. Alabama, Miami. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stick with tradition at all. I commend anyone that wants to stick to tradition. But if you go to a gunfight, if you're in a gunfight or a draw, an old Western or whatever, if you're in an old Western and you have the duel, that's what it is, the duels. You have a duel. And you show up to a duel. One person shows up to a duel with a old Western revolver. And another person shows up to the duel with an M16. Who do you think has the advantage? I still think the revolver can get it done. But I'm sure that you have a much better advantage with an M16 than a revolver. That is essentially game after game after game what Dabo Sweeney or Dabo is doing with his team. I'm not here questioning his coaching style. But what I'm here saying is what is clear as day, and what has been clear as day for a few years now. You're always going to be behind the 8 ball. You're always going to be a step slower than the crowd that you want to find yourself in if you don't adapt to the times. And adapting to the times is using the transfer portal. And if you want to continue to do what you're doing, well, you're going to continue to have games like you had against Georgia, where it was it was a complete mismatch. The only reason why it was 6-0, I believe, going into half is because their offense didn't wake up. But once it woke up, yeah. I'm not saying, again, I still stand by what I said. Clemson, I believe, is going to make the college football playoffs. But you never heard me say that they're going to be a top team or they're going to make a deep run in the playoff. I doubt that very seriously. Because there's a lot of teams that are close to Georgia that they would have to face. And oh man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.